Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. It's crazy. We're back. It's a Sunday conversation, and it's a busy one for Pitt. Obviously, within the National Football League, obviously, it was great to see Avonte Maddox, Kenny Pickett, and A.J. Woods officially clinch their way into the Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. But some good news comes out. One that I thought was kind of on the wayside because from when we heard about it, it's been a little bit of a while, but the first to drop it was Chris Peak over at Panther Lair. Pitt lands a damn good offensive lineman from the portal. One that we talked about here on the channel about how Pitt needed to add more offensive linemen. They had two going into today. Today is the third. And I think there's potentially on the way, potentially a fourth one, but we'll go into that. Obviously, a number of different college football aspects in terms of coaching moves. You look around the country, what's going on there, but we'll be diving into the major news of today. Jeff Pearcy, the offensive lineman from the University of Michigan, officially commits. We haven't seen anything from him, but I think it's enough going around, especially too with reports and from people that I've talked to through sources. And I think he's actually already enrolled at Pitt. So we'll go into a bunch of those comments, obviously, too. Again, guys, cannot thank you enough for supporting the channel. If you haven't done so, subscribe down below, like the video, and obviously, too, the super chat button is down below. I can imagine we'll have a number of different questions on the numerous topics that we'll talk about tonight, but we'll be jumping into it immediately. But obviously, you guys already know before we get into it, the show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Again, two tremendous Pitt men, obviously people that I've known for a long period of time. You guys have seen the posts on Twitter, obviously, a number of different selections between your light beers, your heavier lagers, but they're tremendous people. Two great Pitt men, season ticket holders, Alliance 412 members, and also great donors to the program, especially too when you look at Pitt football. Two great people, great customer service. Anytime you need to go in there and prepare for a tailgate, a party you're having, go over to Colonial Beer. The amount of selection they have in there, the place is massive. They certainly have everything that you need. And if you have any questions, they're always there to answer your questions while you're there. Again, go over and see Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. The show is also sponsored by Thompson Law Group and Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. In this time period, obviously between shifts, obviously we've seen administrations come in and out. People are still dealing with debt, and obviously too what the economy looks like. Brian Thompson and his group are giving out free consultations. Obviously, a guy that really cares about the individual. You look at a lot of the larger law firms around the country that they look at each individual person like a number. With Brian Thompson, it's not the case. He treats you as the individual and looks for the best outcome for you. Again, Brian is a Pitt season ticket holder, a Pitt alum, comes from a great family, has a great family, and one that I'm lucky enough to call a dear friend of mine. But also, too, I vouch for him, and he's a great sponsor, but also I personally use him. So anytime that we have questions, give Brian a call. If he doesn't have the answer, he'll put you in the right direction to make sure that you get the results that you need to be successful in the case and in the results and the questions that you have. Again, Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson. Call them at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Again, Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson. Call them at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Guys, it's been a little bit of a while. Obviously, I've released a couple videos here and there, obviously. But the news of the night, and it's a good one. Pitt lands Michigan transfer offensive lineman Jeff Pearcy, 6'8", 310 pounds. Was a top 150 recruit when he went to the University of Michigan in 2020. He's a 2020 recruit. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. A massive individual. I think that this guy, the way he performs, from the sources that I've talked to, from the information that I got when they first even started talking to Jeff, he was ready to actually compete for a starting offensive line position at the left tackle position, even potentially the right tackle. He can play outside or inside, I think, depending upon what the offensive line looks like for Pitt. I think there's potential that maybe even Ryan Bayer, he could stay a tackle and have Jeff Pearcy move to left guard, or Ryan Bayer moves in, Pearcy goes to left tackle. I think both of them, especially to Ryan Bayer, a tremendous athlete, a guy who's had a really good career so far at Pitt. I think they can play both, either or. And I think that what's going to come down to is what do they look like? You'll probably see Jeremy Darvo really work those guys in and out. When it comes to spring camp, you'll be seeing a lot of stuff in terms of that. This guy, obviously, again, 2020, he's got 1 year of eligibility left. The amount of good things that Michigan fans and also reporters have said about him are certainly way above anybody else that you look at in terms of guys that we've recruited. From the sources that I've talked to, again, he was projected to be a starter. Still working to get involved with answers on that, to why he left. Obviously, Pitt was very aggressive. Again, if you have not done so, subscribe to Alliance 412. Alliance 412 is a major aspect of what went involved with this. This is a guy that certainly had a lot of offers coming out of Michigan in terms of the transfer portal. Obviously, again, a top 150 recruit in high school. I mean, he had every offer from everywhere. He had over 10 offers from the Power Four going into the transfer portal. If you look around the country right now, in college football, it's a fact. You have every single team looking at offensive linemen. Every team's looking to pick up offensive linemen, one for depth. I think Pitt's done a damn good job now. We talked about how, Pitt picked up two offensive linemen in the portal previously. If I go into here, I'll probably share my screen here with you guys to show what exactly it does look like. See if I can pull up the list here. Let me see here. Try to pull this up and share my screen with you guys here. Share screen. Obviously, now you guys can see it exactly. Okay, here's the list of all the transfer players that we currently have in here. Obviously, the ones that have committed to Pitt that we know of. Obviously, you look at the offensive lineman. Obviously, Michigan offensive lineman Jeff Percy today. Richmond offensive lineman Keith Guvia, who's a massive individual too. I think you're looking at a lot of guys. You look at they're big and massive. Also, too, Charlotte offensive lineman Kendall Stanley. Again, he was an all-conference player, first-team all-conference in probably the best Group of 5 division, or best Group of 5 conference in terms of the American Athletic Conference. He's a guy who's damn good. I think that the one thing I would like to see out of him this offseason is to gain a little bit more weight. He was at about 285 pounds. I'd like to see him gain in that 10 to 15 pound range, get him up to 295, 300 pounds. Obviously, Mike Stacchiotti, the Pitt Ironworks, obviously, those guys are truly the best. Stacchiotti and his crew down there will certainly put him to work. Tremendous offensive lineman there. He had a number of different players, and we talked about how Charlotte offensive lineman Kendall Stanley picked Pitt over Michigan State. That was a battle really towards the end. Even Miami got involved. Richard Guvia obviously beat out Virginia Tech, but also numerous other schools in the Power Four that were looking at Keith Guvia. And obviously, too, Michigan offensive lineman Jeff Percy had 10 offers coming out into the transfer portal. Obviously, Pitt did a good job there. And again, none of that stuff happens without Alliance 412, guys. I can't tell you how much that truly is important going into what we're doing. But also, too, potentially another add into the portal moving forward as well with Rocco Spindler, the offensive lineman, starting offensive lineman, offensive guard from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Obviously, anytime you can go after an offensive lineman from a national championship contender, a team that played a national title, it's important to go after him. Also, too, for people that don't know, obviously, Rocco Spindler, his dad played defensive end for the Pitt Panthers, obviously a legacy name. Back in the day, Spindler was truly the man. I mean, just was an absolute mauler, a guy who was very aggressive at defensive end. We would like to rekindle that. I think Pitt needs to do a little bit of work there. Obviously, he's a guy that we are certainly involved with. We've made contact. They are certainly after him. This does not sway anything in terms of not going after him. There's a lot of teams after Rocco right now. He's actually, people were trying to report that he was on visits and whatnot. He was not on visits. He's actually looking to plan those visits as we speak from the sources that I've talked to. We should probably see those teams and what they look like this week. But I can tell you right now that Pitt is heavily involved with Rocco Spindler. And I think that, do I think it's like an 80, 90% chance we get him? No, I'd say it's 50-50. I think there needs to be a lot of work involved, too, with, Rocco's family. In the past, I think the Pitt administration did not do a good job of keeping in touch with a lot of former alumni. which is truly horrible on Pitt's end. I think that's an absolute joke on Pitt's end. They need to be better at being able to contact their former players and invite former players back. It needs to be more welcoming. And that starts, at the top of administration, obviously before the administration that was there now. Obviously, you still had this is dating back to the Steve Peterson days. Dave Wannstedt did a really good job of rekindling a lot of those relationships. And then after that, it was kind of on the wayside. But obviously Nordenberg was not a good job at that. I mean, I thought he did a horrible job overall as a chancellor at Pitt. Steve Peterson, an athletic director, he was, obviously very shitty, to put it lightly. I thought Chip Long did pretty good in his time period here, but obviously he was handcuffed for a number of different times. But the leadership that's currently there now, I expect them to try to rekindle what's truly there. But they'll have some work to do. But Pitt is certainly very much 100% involved with the recruitment of Rocco Spindler, and a guy that me personally, I think that he is a must get. I think this is a great addition that Pitt got, obviously, with Jeff Spires, obviously. But when you look at the overall group that we have here right now, I think it's, truly just second to none what it looks like right now. I know, guys, the questions are obviously coming in right now. Obviously, we have the super chat button down below. Make sure you hit that. Obviously, too, we'll get into questions after here. Just got to go into a couple more things, and then we'll be answering questions here as it goes forward. So we'll stop sharing there. But obviously, too, I really like this ad. I mean, we heard about this, roughly about a week ago. It didn't go as fast as I thought. I was kind of worried that maybe this had just, flown by the wayside. Obviously, again, Chris Peak dropped it, early this afternoon. I was actually out on the road for my career and what I was doing for work. And it truly dropped. And again, good job on Chris and those guys over there putting it out. But this is a great ad, guys. I think that when you look at a player like him, who was a top 150 recruit, he was going to be a starter in Michigan. From the sources that I've talked to within, from that are close to Pitt and people who talk about this player here, he was going to be a starter. I think that, we're going to have to do a little bit of deep dive on why he went out. I think he got more money probably from the outside market. I think it's a really good thing. He says a lot about Alliance 412 and talks about where Pitt's motivations are. Again, this is another offensive lineman. Pitt now has 3 offensive linemen. Kendall Stanley from Charlotte. Again, Gouveia. I'm always forgetting his first name. Keith Gouveia, Richmond offensive lineman, who was very much a sought-after offensive lineman in the portal. And now Michigan transfer offensive lineman Jeff Percy. Again, 6'8", 310 pounds. He's an aggressive offensive lineman. Truly did a good job in his time period. In Michigan, obviously, he had a number of starts at Michigan. Also, too, contributed within people that got hurt, was able to jump in there, did a really good job, especially, too, from his past couple of years, obviously getting in there. If people don't know, obviously, I think in the world of recruiting, Michigan and Pitt really recruit a lot of the same players and looking for the same characteristics on how they recruit. At Michigan, it's kind of hard to get on the field for how deep their offensive line group is. I even put, you look at Notre Dame, they lost 4 or 5 offensive linemen, but they got a number of guys on their depth chart that you look at down the road and you say, hey, they got a lot of offensive linemen at Notre Dame. They just develop really good players up front. And I think the best teams in college football have the best offensive lines and the best defensive lines. There's really no question about that from top to bottom. So I really like this ad. I think the Michigan transfer, this is going to be it's a really good kid. I think everything that I've been told, again, tremendous person, tremendous individual, someone who will fit in with Pitt as a Pitt man moving forward, incredibly coachable. This is one where you say, hey, Pitt did a good job here. And, obviously I got a lot of heat from people that said, Pitt was done recruiting, offensive linemen. I got a lot of that. I told you guys they weren't done. They're still not done. They're still looking to add a number of different players through the transfer portal. Also, too, look at the roster spots. I'll go back and obviously do some numbers on what does currently the roster look like now, because you can only have so many offensive linemen, so many running backs, etc. I think preferably what they're looking at now is looking to add one more offensive lineman if they're there. Also, too, pretty funny. West Virginia people. This is why right here. This is why Pitt did not recruit and basically allow the commitment of William Reed, the offensive lineman out of Princeton. This is why. This was in the works. They had guys. Obviously, you look at Pitt overall. They have a leaderboard in terms of just interest, where they have certain players and a ranking. This is one of the guys that was up there. I mean, he was truly right at the top. This is, again, a good ad and a guy that I expect to start at either guard or, left guard or left tackle in my position. I think it's going to be a really good one overall. I think he's a tremendous athlete. Again, very aggressive. You watch his tape. The coaches that I've talked to and the people that I've talked to around the program talk about how, hey, he's a damn good player, to put it mildly. So this is good. Obviously, too, now leading up to the Rocco Spindler, again, Pitt is still very much involved just because they got the Michigan transfer and Jeff Percy. That does not stop Pitt from going after Rocco Spindler. They are certainly after him, but there's also plenty of other teams involved with Rocco Spindler right now as well. Again, right now he's putting together a list in terms of where his visits are going to be. Pitt is very much in the hunt for this. I think they're really getting after this aggressively. Will Pitt come in as the highest offer for Rocco? No, I think we're going to need to have a little bit things really happen for us to make sure that this goes down. Also, too, I think Pitt needs to rekindle a lot of stuff with just the Spindler family overall. Obviously, if you know Rocco's dad, again, like I said before, a tremendous athlete at the University of Pittsburgh. But there was a little bit of friction there. And again, it comes down to just a lack of leadership at Pitt over a duration of time from the early 2000s to 2010, 2015. It had a lot of numbers. I think, again, the leadership from up top, from Nordenberg, from Peterson, those guys were truly not good leaders in terms of the University of Pittsburgh. They were absolutely horrible. Dave Wanstedt, in his time period here, he was the one who really did a really good job of bringing back former players. That's why he was so liked. That's why he did really well in recruiting. He was a very good people person. And he loved the University of Pittsburgh, and he involved a lot of the alumni when they came back. That kind of stuff needs to get back into the focal point. And that starts at the top. Obviously, Joan Gable has done a better job at that. Patrick Gallagher, obviously Chancellor Gallagher, did a really good job at that. He brought those back. Alan Green has been certainly involved with former alumni now. Obviously, he's been making those phone calls. He's been making those introductions. He's doing a really good job on the back end right now, but being able to build this out right now during the offseason. I would expect Pitt to be really, in terms of aggressive next offseason as well, for where they go and what they do in the transfer portal, and especially, too, with revenue sharing, as all that stuff goes down. And obviously, just, Kevin Green's got a lot on his hands right now, what he's doing for the University of Pittsburgh as well. Obviously, guys, we've got now over between X. If you're over on X, head over to YouTube, hit the subscribe button, and hit the like button on this video. Obviously, we have roughly about 723 people between both in here right now. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the podcast. Let's dive into it here. See some of the comments here. What's the status of each former Pitt player in the current portal and who hasn't signed yet anywhere, especially Elliot Donald? Is he going to walk away from football if it happens? Pitt tough guy. Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't looked at that. I haven't looked at where those players have gone. Obviously, I think the only ones that I know are personally, like Rylan Gandy. Rylan Gandy committed to Indiana University, and Kurt Signetti, he went up there. Pitt paid him pretty well here for what he did last year. Obviously, Gandy didn't have a tremendous season. Towards the end of the stretch, I thought some of his play really, decreased a little bit. I thought he could have played a lot better down the stretch. We saw in games against SMU, Louisville, that you kind of just, scratched your head a little bit. But Pitt certainly still paid him. He still won a little bit more, and God bless him. That's what he wanted to do. Elliot Donald, from my understanding, has not gone anywhere. I think that I'll have to go back and look from a couple of those other players, but I haven't really noticed anybody else for where they're going. Been really focused on what Pitt's doing in the portal, talking to enough people to understand what are they looking for. I knew they weren't done from anybody that I talked to. I knew they were looking at more people. I knew they were looking at more players. I know people thought I was nuts to say that, but I wasn't. It's still here. They're still going after guys. I think they could potentially even be active after the spring ball, because potentially you look at overall your roster, what's truly there. And then after spring ball, you say, hey, here's our pros and here's our cons. Here's a couple gaps in the roster. And they go out and add a couple more guys. I think overall, again, and I'll probably share my screen again here very soon. But overall, you look at the transfer portal and what they've done. They have attacked a lot of their weaknesses. I think overall, you look at the quarterback room, I think they wanted to add a quarterback to back up Eli Holstein and create competition for Julian Duggar. I think Julian Duggar has earned him that spot right now for the QB2. Also, too, Mason Heinrich, obviously the true freshman coming in. I did an interview with him. If you have not seen that, by the way, go over to my YouTube channel. I interviewed Pitt's new quarterback commit. He was really good, obviously, overall, a damn good quarterback. We fought off Michigan. It was really good overall. We did a really good job holding off Michigan and getting those guys here. Let me see here. Let me see. Yeah. Again, yeah, obviously just about a week ago. We released it last Sunday. It's done a really good job. And again, Mason's a great kid. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback potentially in the future. And also, too, they added a walk-on quarterback, Bo, out of Michigan. So really, right now, I think that when you look at the walk-on status of him, they got 3 quarterbacks on scholarship right now. I think Bo has a potential to really earn a scholarship at Pitt. So I think right now they really have 4 quarterbacks that could play if they really needed it to. But they wanted another quarterback just in case, obviously Eli Holstein, went down again. But I think this offensive line addition should really keep Eli Holstein upright. That's going to be the main factor going forward. But also, too, you look at the competition level at the offensive line position. You've got all these guys. You've got Jeff Percy. You've got Keith Guvia now. You've got Kendall Stanley. Those 3 offensive linemen from the portals. That's 3. Ryan Bayer, number 4. B.J. Williams, number 5. Lyndon Cooper, 6. Jackson Brown, 7. Isaiah Montgomery, 8. Caleb Brown, obviously the 4-star offensive lineman who could play guard or center. That's 9. I mean, you really have 9 guys in your rotation right now. But I think when you got a guy like Rocco Spindler out there, it's not a guy that they walk away from. It's going to be a guy that they go after. And I know they're really getting to be aggressive right now to get him an opportunity to come visit on campus to get that opportunity. I think if they really closed it out, in my opinion, 4 offensive linemen would be good, a good overhaul from the portal. Because you have 4 there, and you have 5. Ryan Bayer, Lyndon Cooper, B.J. Williams, Jackson Brown, Isaiah Montgomery, and then Caleb Brown, and then even Trey Ray. That's 7 guys right there. I think that's 11 guys on the offensive line you could rotate through. And I think Jackson Brown, as a guy that I think should be playing next year, I think he did a really good job coming in and developing towards the end of the year. I think he just needed snaps. I mean, those guys are redshirt freshmen, redshirt sophomore that just need time and actual repetitions in a game. I think they got better as the season went on. I'm very big on Jackson Brown, Isaiah Montgomery, Caleb Brown. Those guys, I think overall, and Trey Ray, I think those guys overall can be really, really good. They just needed some repetitions. I think Pitt, with the addition of 1 more offensive lineman, will have depth and guys who have actually had game repetitions. I mean, you can't help with just 3 guys they've added. The 3 guys they've added now with Ryan Bayer, game experience, B.J. Williams, game experience, Lyndon Cooper, game experience, Jackson Brown, finally game experience, Isaiah Montgomery, game experience. It's a lot different going into this year. You have an offensive line that actually has been battle tested within the actual rankings of college football. They have faced other teams, not just themselves at practice. A game is 10 times different than a practice. I can tell you that. The overall competition going into camp right now looks damn good, and I'm very happy about it. We needed to make those additions. I thought 2 wasn't enough. Jeff Percy coming in at number 3, and then if you can land Rocco Spindler, I think it's a damn good overall. And I would think it'd be really hard to keep Jeff Percy and Rocco Spindler. I think you get Rocco Spindler, he's going to be a starter. I'm just telling you that right now. Coming from a national championship team, he did a hell of a job. Go watch the tape of just how he was mauling people and mauling Ohio State. He'd be a damn good ad. And I really hope, they're pushing hard for him right now, but I know there are going to be some teams that come in there with big dollar amounts. So again, that's why Alliance 412 is so critical to the people that subscribe to Alliance 412. Thank you so much, including I'm a subscriber to Alliance 412, the 412 level. Again, it's even the $20 a month does wonders, especially too when you get 5,000 people to do it. Hell, if you get to that number, you're drawing millions of dollars every year. just annually. It makes Pitt that much more competitive. And you're watching across college football. Okay, we can say whatever we want, but you look at Penn State right now. They went out and got Jim Knowles. That was a huge breakup. We heard about that. There seemed to be friction about a couple weeks ago before the national title game. There was some friction between Ryan Day and Jim Knowles. Jim Knowles obviously has a fiance that's down in Oklahoma. I personally thought he was going to go to Oklahoma because of the relationships that he has down there. That's not the case. He's going to Penn State. He's going to be getting $3.2 million a year, the highest paid assistant or coordinator in college football. You're watching teams around the country get after it. And I've been a major advocate, and I've told people this forever. Whether people want to agree with this or not, football is the front porch of every university. People want to be a part of a winner. If you're producing winners in football, people want to apply to your school. For the last 4 years, Pitt has broken records every year in applicants to the university. That's a healthy university. You're growing more. Pitt's also buying a lot of land and real estate to build more dorms. They're building more dorms and bring more people on to where the enrollment now goes up. It's all going in the right direction to build over time. Things are moving in the right direction and where they want to go to build revenue. And Alan Green, a guy, I can tell you this from behind the scenes, is working his ass off. He's a natural born leader, a guy who can generate revenue, and he's implementing those things into the university. You may not be hearing about it now. You'll probably hear more about it during the summertime and into the fall. And I agree with what he's doing. So you'll be really happy when that kind of stuff comes out, or maybe we'll release that maybe before fall camp if it isn't out yet. Let's see here. Eric, you think any big donors would pay more to get Spindler? I do. I'm not going to say who they are or what they're doing, but I know that there are a number of former players and Pitt football alum that want Spindler to come here. There are a lot of people that just truly love the Spindler family. Obviously, Derek, he was an absolute stud here. I mean, an incredible football player at defensive end. I can't tell you how much he was loved. I mean, he is a tremendous individual, a great person. That family is truly incredible. I wouldn't be shocked if Alliance 412 wrapped their hands around a couple major donors who really want to get involved in this and have been pushing this to say, hey, we want to make a major push to this. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other factors of what other universities are saying to Rocco and what those conversations look like. I don't know from the other universities' perspective, but I can tell you for a fact right now, Pitt wants Rocco Spindler. They want this kid. And I think he's a damn good football player. He comes from a great family. He is at a definition, of a Pitt man, And again, I think there's some stuff that needs to go on behind the scenes to mend a couple fences of just neglect with former athletes. And again, that's on Pitt for doing a horrendous job, a lack of leadership. The leadership now that's there is good. But, for me personally, I want to see more Pitt men and women get hired at Pitt and put Pitt first. Pitt needs to be put first. It's that simple. The days of mediocrity have got to come to an end. The days of bullshit need to come to an end. Whether that's, Pat Narduzzi figuring shit out or going in another direction, which potentially could be on the brink, that's fine. But we need more Pitt men and women to get into the, basically, I call it the front office of Pitt athletics to push our agenda. It's that simple. And to really create revenue, which I think there are. There are a lot of good people that are really joining forces at Pitt. I think it's going in the right direction from what I've been told and from my sources. Again, from people that I talk to. I don't care what other outlets are saying and what they're doing. I talk to enough people and they know, there's a lot when there's bullshit going on and when there's actual real stuff happening. And I think that they're going in the right direction. But anybody else knows, Rocco Spindler is very wanted here. And from anybody I've talked to, they are aggressively pursuing him because the interest for him right now is through the roof between the Big Ten, the SEC, and the ACC. Just putting that out there. But very good question, Derek, and I do agree they would. All right. Tommy, if Pitt can get Percy and Spindler would be an incredible turn of events after disaster of the last 6 games. Tommy, I mean, yeah, they've already got Percy. You really want to get one more and then potentially watch the movement potentially if you maybe it comes to pushing guys out, unfortunately. I think after spring ball, you'll figure out, hey, and I think Pitt does a really good job of this. There's going to be guys on the 2 deep or not on the 2 deep that you say, hey, You're not going to get a lot of playing time here. Let's go find you a place where you're going to be able to play more, get you an opportunity to build your resume somewhere else. And I think Pitt's done that in the past, and Pitt's always been really good about that. It's just being honest with players, saying, hey, look, you're not going to play here. Daquan, obviously the defensive end from Virginia, was a 4-star recruit, I think, in the 2020 class. Charlie Partridge was very honest with him and just said, look, you're not going to play here, but let's get you an opportunity to go somewhere else. And that worked out. But there's also plenty of other opportunities out there. Pitt's done a really good job of that in the past. But Pitt is very active still in the portal. If it makes sense, they're not just going to add bodies into certain portions of the rooms, whether it's quarterback room, the running back room. I know for a fact they're still looking at tight ends, potentially adding a tight end. They're still looking there. One more offensive lineman in the perfect world. Obviously, Rocco is number 1 right now on the board. There's no doubt about it right now. But I think if an attractable back that they looked at, a bigger back, was on the board, potentially going after them. It just comes down to what the roster looks like right now. What does the overall numbers look like? And then they'll make those decisions. But I think overall right now, when you look at what Cade Bell's done and when you look like with Pat Narduzzi and Randy Bates and Ryan Manilak, I think they've done a good job. They've done a good job of adding from the portal and making sure they've gone after certain guys that say, hey, this makes sense. Adam, who would be your 5 O-line guys if they got Spindler? This is a good question. Good question here. I think in a perfect world for me, if I had to do a top 5, I think at left tackle you'd have Jeff Percy. I think at left guard you'd have Ryan Baer. I think at center you'd have Lyndon Cooper. At right guard you'd have B.J. Williams. And then at right tackle I would put Kendall Stanley. I think those would be my guys. And then, watch the inside guys, whether it's even, I guess if you got Rocco, what you're saying, if we got Rocco Spindler too. Ooh, that'd be tough. I think potentially maybe, Ryan Baer, then I think I'd keep Ryan Baer at left tackle, Rocco Spindler at left guard. Rocco Spindler can also play center, by the way. So I think even potentially you could have numerous ones back and forth. If you did if you had one group, you had Percy at left tackle, you had Ryan Baer at left guard, you had Rocco Spindler at center, and you had B.J. Williams at right guard, and then at right tackle you had Kendall Stanley. You could potentially mix and match. You could say, hey, you know what? We'll push Ryan Baer at the left tackle. You could have Rocco Spindler at left guard, Lyndon Cooper at center, B.J. Williams at right guard, and then you'd have, obviously, at right tackle, Kendall Stanley, or you take out Kendall Stanley if you think that, obviously, Jackson Brown, again, a Pitt legacy name, who I think has done a tremendous job. That's a big body guy at right tackle. I thought he did good down the stretch. I think potentially you could also have 2 in there. If you really wanted to, depending upon the battle and also, too, the actual competition, you could have Guvia. Guvia can play. Keith Guvia is a big guy. He's going to compete at right guard and right guard and left guard. He could be a guy that he could start at right guard, and maybe you can rotate in B.J. Williams in and out. It's all going to come down to how the competition goes, and also to learning the offense. These are guys I think you could truly mix and match. You're on a board right now where you say, hey, shit's going to get very competitive here. I got news for you. Spring camp's going to come around. No one should feel safe on the offensive line. Nobody. It's going to be an all-out brawl in terms of competition. You could slide Keith Guvia in at right guard, take B.J. Williams out, put Kendall Stanley in at left and at right tackle, or take him out, put Jackson Brown there. You could take out, obviously, put B.J. Williams back in at right guard, move Keith Guvia at left guard, put Rocco Spindler out from left guard, put him in at center, keep Ryan Baer in at left tackle, or move Ryan Baer if they think he's better at guard, move him in at guard, and put Percy at left tackle. I mean, there's a lot of mixing and matching that you could go to, but I think that no matter what, Rocco's going to start. I wouldn't be shocked there's a competition between guard and center. And I think he's a damn good center. He went to Notre Dame as a center and did really good. He played guard and center. It's going to come down to a competition, and it's going to be fair. And I think if he competed at guard or center, he's going to win either one of those battles, in my opinion. He's that good. But guess what? He's not at Pitt yet, so we can't, in the hypotheticals, we can't add him in yet. Okay? And I think there's a lot of stuff that truly needs to happen before we say Rocco Spindler comes here. There's going to be a lot of aggressive offers out there. There's a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes. He's planning visits right now. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. I'm more focused on the guys that are here now, and we'll certainly watch from afar of what Pitt does in terms of being competitive going after Rocco. That's just my opinion. Speedy Tortoise, do you think one of Stanley, Spindler, if they get him, or Percy move inside to accommodate the three? Again, Stanley, Spindler, if they get him. Stanley's not going to move inside. I can tell you that. He's a tackle. Percy can move inside if he wanted to, but I wouldn't be shocked if Percy at 6'8", brother, he's 6'8", I would think he's playing – I would think overall he's playing tackle. I think he's very fast. He's very agile. He's got good footwork. I think he can play guard. I mean, almost like look at the Philadelphia Eagles today. They moved Kelvin. I want to say Kelvin Beachum, or what's his name? I can't remember his name from the Eagles. Obviously, they moved him from tackle into guard. He's like 6'7", 6'8". Depends on how they do. Obviously, spring camp's going to tell us a lot. I mean, it's going to be it's a strong competition going forward. We're going to see what that looks like. And then obviously too, Caleb Holmes. I can't remember what the hell was I calling Caleb. His last name. I might have been calling him wrong the entire time. Caleb Holmes can also play center. He can play guard. Pitt finally has depth pieces where they can really mess around and move guys in and out. It's going to come down to who learns the offense the quickest, and also too, what does mixing and matching look like in terms of outside or inside? Does one guy have to look better at inside than outside, to where you shift out pieces instead of saying, hey, we originally had our offensive line one look like this, but we projected Percy to play tackle, but we think he's better at guards. So you move him in. So then what does offensive tackle look like at left tackle? There's a lot of questions that go involved with that right now, and I think that spring ball will really decipher that. I can give you as many opinions as I want, but it comes down to how well do they work together? What do they look like at each position in this offense? And obviously, too, towards the end of the year, we had so many injuries. We weren't even going up tempo anymore. I mean, it was like defeating the purpose, because it was just so out of whack, because we had so many different offensive linemen in there between our second and third string. I think that's going to be a major factor. Which one of these offensive linemen can keep up pace? Because I got news for you. Cade Bell this year does not want to stop going fast. That stuff towards the end of the year was pissing him off. I think that this offense is next level when it's going fast and it's up tempo all the time and not slowing down. It can slow down towards the end of the game when you have a lead and you're trying to control the clock. We've seen that. They did that against North Carolina. Pitt won the game by 10 points, and they controlled the clock towards the end of the game. You saw how they were able to slow it down. But in a perfect world, they want to continue to go fast. Which one of these offensive linemen can keep up? It's one, learning the offense. Two, the speed and the tempo of the offense. Can you keep up with the speed of the tempo of the offense? And then three, how well do they work together in chemistry? I tell people this all the time, and they don't want to hear this stuff, but it's the truth. The offensive lines from the defensive line are completely different. Defensive line, you can rotate out, 6, 7, 8 guys. You can rotate those guys in terms of, keeping your bodies fresh. Offensive line, these guys, you want 5 guys. You want 5 guys who gel together and go forward. And then you want really 2 to 3 guys that you could say, hey, our 6th, 7th, and 8th man, they can rotate in here if they have to. If there's an injury, or if a guy needs a break real quick, that's fine. But on the offensive line, you want 5 guys across the board who have great chemistry, know what they're going to do, protections, understanding audibles. When they change the play at the line of scrimmage, Eli's calling a play, and then he changed the play through an audible. I want him to go to that offensive line up front, make an audible, and know across the board, here's what my offensive line are going to be doing. When you're rotating guys in or out, it changes the chemistry of the offensive line. One guy's not on the same page here. One guy's not on the same page there. All it takes is one guy to mess up, and the play's just completely screwed. So you want those guys on a top 5 basis to work together. And I can assure you, spring camp, they're going to run multiple different units out there, mix and match. Who works the best together and who wants to be on the field the most? And that gets into a whole line of different things. I think when you look at the offensive line, this is going to be a much deeper offensive line for Pitt this year. I love the additions. I want Rocco just that one more addition to the offensive line. I mean, you look at the players they've added across the board. Pitt's added a number of Power 4 really good assets to both sides of the football. But also, too, going into the season, Pitt needs to win the games that they need to win. The guaranteed games. You can't lose to teams like Boston College or Virginia. Those two games, if they take care of business, or they take care of the Clemson game, that gets them to 9 wins on the year, and then we don't end 7-6. But injuries happen. But it's still, you want depth. You don't want to hear the bullshit of, hey, they didn't finish the game, or they couldn't finish against certain teams. I mean, the amount of former players that I talked to that were so pissed off that they lost to Virginia, and they're just like, these games you can't lose. Okay, I'm less concerned, the stupidity from Pat Narduzzi in terms of what he did and in terms of the Toledo game. I don't really worry too much about that game because you had a fifth-string quarterback in, for Christ's sake, and you had a walk-on. I mean, we were missing 9 starters from both sides of the football. I mean, the bowl game is more about getting guys in to see what you look like and then find out where your holes are and then who wants to play and who doesn't. That's another thing, too. I want guys that are going to go full tilt the entire time they're on the field and absolutely want to win at all costs. That's what you want out there all the time. And I think competition breeds that, because if there's competition behind you, they got to play their ass off or they're going to be on the bench. It's that simple. Pat Narduzzi will play the guys that want to play hard. It's that simple. And Pitt needs to win the games they're supposed to win this year. No more bullshit losses. Tim Bales, what's up, JJ? What's up, Tim? Appreciate you joining the live stream. Obviously, again, if you've not done so, subscribe down below if you're on X. Again, now we have 803 people watching the show live between X and YouTube, and I think some in here from Facebook, from Pitt Panther Fanatics, obviously, the posting on there. If you haven't done so as well, follow my page on Facebook, Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Let me see here. I think I can even share my screen here. If you haven't done so yet, let's see here. Obviously, too, if you guys have not seen, this is the channel here. Obviously, we've got a number of different videos up. Obviously, right here. Obviously, Mason was incredible. This was an incredible interview right here. If you haven't done so, it's on the channel here. A really good interview overall. Great young man. Obviously, private equity in college football. That's a big one right here. Obviously, the rankings at the top 75. Pitt came in at number 42. I go into reason why, and also too some of our rivals who are below us. That's a really good one right there too. So make sure you go in there and subscribe to the channel. It certainly helps out quite a bit. So I appreciate that as always. Let's see here. Let me see. I'm going to share my screen here as well. And we'll look here again. Look at the overall list. Again, you look at the overall players Pitt has got committed to this point through the transfer portal. Again, Utah State defensive end Blaine Spires, who I think is going to be really good here. He just needs to hit the Pitt Ironworks. I think he needs to add a little bit more weight. A guy that's 6'2", 6'3", you want him to be in that 235, 245 range. I think that'd be a really good weight for him overall. Utah State defensive end Blaine Spires, Michigan offensive lineman Jeff Percy, Richmond offensive lineman Keith Guvia. A really good one here. Oregon defensive end Jaden Moore, a guy who I think is going to start right away. This is a damn good football player, former top 150 or 175. I can't remember. I have to look that up. Damn good player. Oregon defensive end. And then you have Louisville wide receiver Blue Hicks. Had a really good game against Pitt last year. 6 receptions for over 90 yards and a touchdown. Ohio State defensive back Jaden Bonsu. I think he's going to be able to play safety position or linebacker. If he plays safety, he'll play like a Donovan McMillan. Somebody he can play down in the box, a big hitter, very physical, a guy that I think is going to be damn good in this Pitt-style defense, attack-style defense. People love the Pat Narduzzi aggressive style. That'll be good going forward. I thought J.J. Laster and Cade Bell did a really good job here. Andy Jean, wide receiver, former 4-star recruit, committed to Florida, had offers from everywhere. A damn good wide receiver, a bigger guy, 6'3", 6'4", a guy who has a speed of 4.4, 4.5 speed. Fits what what Cade Bell wants to do. Then obviously two here, Florida State wide receiver Deuce Spann, 6'4", 4.4 speed. Again, a deep threat, a guy who can stretch the field. I think if you want more of that, A guy like Kenny Johnson, too, obviously. Kenny Johnson, again, just towards the end of the year, you saw how good he was just in traffic. Great hands, a guy who's going to really just specialize in this offense. Kenny Johnson, a guy to watch this year. Konate Mumfield going to the NFL. Kenny Johnson's going to get a lot of looks this year, and we're going to need him to be very productive. We're going to rely on Kenny Johnson quite a bit. Murray State place kicker, a 5-star in the portal, James London. Charlotte offensive lineman Kendall Stanley. Eastern Michigan defensive end Joey Zielinski. Again, we talked about his journey. Going as a walk-on to Eastern Michigan, he earned a scholarship. I mean, the overall statistics of what he was able to do, a guy that creates a lot of pressure when it comes to attacking and really getting after the quarterback, a guy that we can really watch, and he's going to be really good overall. Cal PA Division II, Rashawn Murray. He's a Division II All-American. Again, I'm not a big guy on taking, D2 guys, but guess what? When he's an All-American, I think you can take him. But more importantly, Rashawn Murray is a hometown hero, so I'll definitely take his ass. I think Rashawn Murray, we're excited, pumped up. He's from the City League. Anytime you can get a hometown hero or a Whippeal guy or a City League guy, you take him. And he's tough. He's tough as nails. Anybody that I talk to, he's a big guy, 6'3", a cornerback. I think he can be a really good player and a guy who can really develop into a potential, draft pick down the line. I think he'll be really good and really happy Rashawn picked Pitt. I know there's a number of different Power 4 programs that were certainly after him. And then finally, UC Davis cornerback Kavir Baines. A number of different Power 4 organizations were after him as well. I think he had 4 or 5 different Power 4 offers as well. Damn good player as well. He can play cornerback or he can move into the safety position. A veteran guy in terms of that back end. So a number of different guys here. Obviously, man, my notifications and my personal messages are going off here. But you look at the overall list here. Damn good guys, I think, across the board you can look at and say, man, hey, they've done a good job of addressing the needs. I mean, you look across the board on guys across, the defensive ends. We talked about defensive tackle. Pitt's done a good job of keeping to the guys at defensive tackle that they need. Obviously Anthony Johnson, who was at a Youngstown State, went to Pitt, ended up having, unfortunately, an injury. I still think, man, he would have been a tremendous football player this year and next year. He's now a recruiter. He's behind the scenes. He's doing a lot of stuff I heard, recruiting-wise. He's doing a really good job. You see him posting a lot on Twitter. So they did a good job of keeping defensive tackles. I mean, you've got, obviously, Sean Fitzsimmons will be a starter. Nick James will probably be your 2 starters up front right there. Then you got Francis Breu, Jasir Whittington, Isaiah Neal. You've got those guys, those 5 guys there, potentially 6. If you look at the entire defensive tackle room, I think the defensive tackle room looks really good. I think there's a lot of guys that will really step up as the year goes on when you look at overall that room out there. And then they really needed defensive linemen. I mean, you look at the defensive linemen, Blaine Spires, Jaden Moore, and then obviously 2 Eastern Michigan defensive end, Joey Zielinski. You've got those 3. You've got returning starter Jimmy Scott. That's number 4 right there. And obviously 2, you've got obviously Nate Temple coming back. That's a fifth defensive end right there. And obviously 2, you get young guys back there. When it comes back to defensive ends, Ty Uhas out of Pittsburgh Central Catholic, a Whippeal hometown hero. I want to see what he develops into at that defensive end position. He can play defensive end or defensive tackle, but I think the numbers will allow him to really produce at the defensive end position. And then Maverick Gracios also back there. He did a really good job. You saw him on special teams, especially to the block punt against West Virginia. He's a big body guy. I think he's going to be tremendous. He's a guy who continues to develop at that defensive end spot as well. So you got depth there now at defensive end as they continue to develop. And obviously spring ball will really tell us a lot in terms of who's really producing and who's really not, who's really being able to have a chance to be productive this year from the portal, but obviously too the guys that kept on the team. Then you look at the wide receiver room. You wanted wide receivers. You got 3 wide receivers here between Louisville Blue Hicks, wide receivers, obviously Deuce Spann and Andy Jean. That was really good. She added the wide receiver position, the cornerback position. You did a really good job there of adding a corner. I think they've done a good job of really addressing their needs in terms of the portal. I think that they're looking at potential tight ends. Obviously Jake Overman right now would be the starter at tight end, which, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with a guy who's actually really looked good overall in terms of the season as a good compliment to Gavin Bartholomew. I think they want more depth there at the tight end position. Obviously, they'll have a redshirt freshman, obviously, back there. I think he was, in terms of, people were ranking him as like a freshman All-American going into the season last year. I'm drawing a blank on his name. But I think it'd be good for Pitt to add. Potentially, if they have room, again, a tight end they're looking to add there. If there's a bigger back, I think a bigger back would work really well with Desmond Reed and Jules Goff. You got those bigger guys back there. You still have Derek Davis Jr. If they feel good about him being the bigger back, that'll be your three guys. I think before Derek Davis got hurt, I thought he was looking to be really, really good down the stretch. And injury really stopped his season and in their tracks. So we'll watch him as well. And obviously, too, some more guys coming in here as true freshmen, potentially guys that could really pop onto the scene, and we'll watch that as well. So I think they've done a good job of adding the guys they needed to. They needed, they needed defensive ends. They added them. They needed cornerbacks. They added them. They needed safeties. They added them. They were good at the linebacker position. Even with Jordan Bass leaving, they still got 6 guys back there. Braylon Lovelace. They've got him there. Obviously, Kyle Lewis returning, All-American Kyle Lewis. Rasheem Biles. You got him back there as well. You also got Cam Lindsey will be on the scene this year. It was a true freshman this year. He'll be a redshirt freshman. He'll be playing a lot this year. I know I'm forgetting guys' names back there, but obviously that's 4 guys right there. Braylon Lovelace, Rasheem Biles, Kyle Lewis, Jeremiah Marcelin. Obviously, he's the 5th guy to look back there. I think he'll have a really big say in what he does this year. Ryan Manilak has done a really good job. People were so concerned last year when Solomon DeShields and Bengali Kamara hit the portal. Well, they proved people wrong. We didn't miss them at all. We had an All-American, and potentially Rasheem Biles is a guy who could be potentially an All-American this year for how he played based off of how he did last year. So Ryan Manilak has really produced and really recruited a hell of a room back there in the linebacker room. So they've done a good job of adding. Archie Collins and Corey Sanders doing a tremendous job like they always do, just really producing, guys that go from the cornerback or the safety room to the NFL. You got A.J. Woods in the Super Bowl. You've got DeMar Hamlin in the Super Bowl. Avonte Maddox in the Super Bowl. I mean, the names go on and on. You saw Jordan Whitehead in the playoffs this year. Jason Pinnock in the playoffs this year. I mean, you got guys just across the board. Dane Jackson, he's in Buffalo. He obviously in the playoffs right now, playing here tonight. They've done a good job, and I think that they just continually develop. And on the back end, Donovan McMillan will go to the NFL this year. He's a guy to watch. It's a shame if Paris Ford, listened to people like he should have. He would have been a higher draft pick if he would have came back and not quit on his team. He'd have been a guy that had been really big. I think just his overall talent was incredible. Eric Hallett, you watched Eric Hallett. He went to the National Football League. How he developed over the years, a prospect out of Texas. He was incredible down the stretch. I mean, and he just showed off his skills to bring it all together. In the ACC championship game in 2021 when Pitt beat the snot out of Wake Forest, in an 11-win season. So that was good too. So again, Pitt's done a good job of developing talent. It's time to develop this group and really put the pedal to the floor and really have an offset of one being productive and winning some damn good football games this year. But more importantly, winning the games they're supposed to win this year. That's what you want to see. Derek, add Spindler, and our O-line could be really good next year. The kids from Charlotte and Percy are at tackle, Bayer and Spindler at guard, and Cooper at center. Again, that's a good rotation right there as well. Again, B.J. Williams is a guy that I think is really, really good too. He's been a great starter since we've had him here. I think he's been actually the most consistent up front, to say the least. All right, we're 53 minutes in here. Guys, obviously, if you have not done so, I don't see any super chats or anything. I think we've answered all the questions to this point. Guys, again, thank you guys so much for supporting the channel and supporting the podcast. I appreciate everything that you guys do. If you've not done so, again, you guys saw, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Like this video here. Share this with a bunch of your friends or post it on Facebook. Again, on Facebook, follow me, follow my page, Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. I drop all the news there. Obviously, too, some underrated stuff on there that I can't post on Twitter. We post there as well. There's hope going into next season, guys. I really am starting to like this roster and the overall weapons that we have. I think there's still a couple more holes. You look at the tight end position, you want one more guy for depth purposes or a guy who competes for a starting job there. And potentially even a big back if Derek Davis, they feel like Derek Davis isn't good enough to have just one big back. So we'll see what that looks like. But I think tight end would be really the position going forward and one more offensive lineman. And then I think overall you've got in the backfield, Derek Davis, Jules Goff, and Desmond Reed. Desmond Reed, an All-American from last year. It's a good roster right now. But you want to finish strong, go after one more offensive lineman to really solidify this, preferably in a perfect world, have it be Rocco. We'll see what that looks like with all the interest that he's getting, the offers he's going to get on the table. We'll continue to monitor that. But also, they've hit the things that they needed to hit. Now it's time to go into the season. Next Sunday, we'll talk about the simple stuff. If depending upon who commits and who doesn't, if we get more commits, we'll talk more about those and maybe have a live stream during the week. But what does Pitt need to do to be successful next year? They have to win the football games that they're supposed to win. None of these stupid losses that you see on a basis to where they should have won. That kind of stuff has to stop. So you want to see them go to that next level. One of those topics that we'll talk about is winning the games they need to win. So we'll talk about that next week. Guys, again, appreciate all of you, as always, for tuning in to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Guys, thank you, as always. Subscribe, like the video, and always, and of course, as always and forever, hail to Pitt and hail to the ACC. I'll see you guys next time.